Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by the Time We Discuss studio. Today, let's find out what it's like to be a consultant, coach, and trainer. Steve, thank you for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here, my friend. Happy Friday. At least that's what it is here. So,
Happy Friday to you too. So, Steve, you're the owner of Steve Gavatorta Group, which specializes in empowering individuals and organizations in identifying, developing, and exceeding performance goals. You're an author and have experience with behavioral analysis as well as values analysis. You have certifications and accreditations that go behind these. Now, Steve, I have two questions for you, which I'm going to ask you at the same time. The first, when people ask you, Steve, what do you do for a living? How do you typically answer that? And the second question, what is a typical day like for you in this role?
yeah, well, I'm going to steal. I'll give two answers to what I do, and one of which is stolen, was taken by a father of a friend of mine. I do what I do when I want to do it. Now that's a little bit tongue in cheek there, but I spent 20 years in corporate America, and I was really wanting to get out and start my own business. And I'd call my friend's father because he was an entrepreneur his whole life. And I said, Mr. Tepper, what are you doing today? Doing what I want to do when I want to do. And I'm like, God, I want to say that someday. So to some extent I do, but it's not that freewheeling, so to speak. But what I do is kind of what you said in the introduction. I'll sum that up. I help my clients, whether they're individuals or organizations, achieve their goals. I build custom-based training, coaching, speaking, consulting programs relevant to their needs, again, to help them achieve their overarching goals. So if it's a business, help them secure new customers, grow their business, build their profitability. If it's an individual, I help them build whatever goals they're trying to achieve. So it's really a custom-based program of personal and professional self-development.
What's a typical day like when you have a client, you're ready to start working with them? What's a typical day like once you're ready to start the helping process? What's that like?
Yeah, it's a lot. See, one of my points of differentiation, and I'd say it's my key point of differentiation, is I custom build my programs. Um, when you custom build a program, the learnings tend to stick better. There's long-term retention in the learnings. And I knew this from my 20 years in corporate America and my experiences with consultants coming in. So number one, what I try to do is really uncover the foundational elements of success this company needs, skill sets they need to become successful. Then I build relevant programs to help them achieve that success. So there may be similar structures in a sales process that I may use or introduce to a pharmaceutical company versus a general contractor. So the same same four-step process, similar skills. But the way I train against those skills is going to be relevant to that specific business or that industry they're in. So that four-step sales process will be very different, or the process will be the same, but how it's implemented and leveraged will be very different in a pharmaceutical company versus a general contractor. So what I do is do a lot of research, try to understand their business, uncover their pain points, and then I build relevant solutions for them. Most of my business success is based on that upfront work, really having discussions with stakeholders, uncovering their needs, their pain points, what's keeping them up at night, and then building relevant programs to solve for that. And again, those programs are primarily done with live workshop events, and they're oftentimes supplemented with webinars, consulting engagements, and one-on-one coaching as well too. So it's really a custom-built approach to helping them, again, accomplish their goals.
So when you're helping these organizations, do you typically have to play like a very hard sales kind of role to secure these clients, or are you at the stage where different people are coming to you, word of mouth? What is
Yeah.
that typically like for you?
Yeah, 90% of my business has been word of mouth, which is great because for those of people who don't know what that means, it basically means your clients are recommending you to other departments within their organization, or they're recommending you to other people who think may benefit from my skills. So 90% of my growth is by word of mouth. And that's fantastic because it doesn't cost me a dime. And it's coming from a trusted, valued resource. So what I try to do is really, there's probably three or four industries that I focus on. And the reason I focus on those 3 to 4 industries is I've had success in that industry, and I'm smart enough. I know the industry enough. I know the pain points. I know the opportunities, and I'm able to connect dots, talk the talk, so to speak, and understand those things. And it makes a big difference when I'm speaking to clients that this guy doesn't understand our business. No, he's dealt with similar scenarios before in this industry. He does understand our business and he can help us. So I try to gain a lot of experience and knowledge in certain industries, then leverage that again, and that helps that grow that word of mouth. I don't want to go into a client and they're like, this guy doesn't understand our business or he doesn't know, and I never run into that because one, I'm not naive enough to say I know everything about your business. Number two, I do a lot of homework. And number three, um, I try to leverage success in certain areas that can play on themselves, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. So, Steve, earlier you talked about word of mouth and how important that can be, and it creates that credibility. How are you able to? So you said you were in the corporate world before, and then you started your own business. How are you able to take what you had from corporate America, leverage that into your business, and get that credibility from starting from scratch? Did you work in a similar role, like internally within a corporation, and then you just kind of went out? What was that like for you?
Yeah, there's two parts to this. One is just what you said. I was fortunate enough. My first job out of college, I was schlepping toothpaste. I'm a former toothpaste salesman. I used to sell Aquafresh, Hall's cough drops, Kodak film, things of that nature. But back in the day, those companies, consumer packaged goods companies, were the creme de la creme in training, developing salespeople. So you learn basic skills your first job out of college. Those skills translated into the new job you get promoted into, where you learn new skills. So I was fortunate enough in that 21 year career to master sales, become a sales manager, become a sales leader. I spent some time inside of marketing. I spent roles that were a liaison between sales and marketing. I did a stint in loyalty marketing. I did a stint in training. So I had a robust cross-functional experience in my corporate arena, which played well in launching my own business because my experiences can resonate with a salesperson. It can resonate with a manager. It can resonate with a team experiencing change or conflict because I went through it. So that's the first part. I actually was fortunate enough to live, eat, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. That's number one. Number two, my first shot across the bow and gaining new clients were leveraging relationships I had in that industry, consumer packaged goods, because I had history there. I knew people there. I knew the pain points there. So a lot of my first clients were in the consumer packaged goods industry, companies I had worked for, in fact, and companies that were maybe my competitors or similar in the industry. So Cadbury, Schweppes, Kodak, Nutro Pet Products, Mars Pet Care, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, all companies dealing with this consumer packaged goods world where I can easily transition in there and show, leverage my background and my experience in the industry to have some pretty fast success.
That makes sense. You're the second person that I spoke to that has a very similar story. I spoke to a board game writer, Devin, and she originally was inside a company and was developing the brand writing for these different games. And then she ended up going out on her own and doing the same thing and kind of leveraging
Yeah.
those skills from the past, the connections from the past. Is a very smart way of going. It makes sense. If anyone's looking to start a new business, leverage those resources that you already have.
Absolutely. I have my alma mater. They'll occasionally have a freshman call me, about career, what they should do in their career, ideas they should have. And one gentleman called and he wanted to immediately be a consultant and work with other companies. And I told him yeah, you may have a master's degree and all that stuff, but you don't have that practical real world experience. Go get some experience first and then marry up that real world experience with your master's degree. The master's degree alone isn't going to help it. In master, you learn, I'll probably do a lot of case studies and learn a lot, but to put those things in real world where you're feeling these things happen, you're dealing with these in real life situations, that's where it really carries. So I'd take someone with real world practical experience over someone that has a master's or a doctorate degree. I want real world experience, and I think that is important.
Let's stick with education for a second. How important is someone getting an undergrad degree or a master's degree? I know you just spoke a little bit about a master's degree, but how important is that in pursuing sales or some kind of business? I mean, obviously, if you want to be an entrepreneur, okay, I think it's very prudent to have some kind of business education experience, whether it's a formal university or through
Yeah,
online, as long as you're learning in some capacity. But what's
right.
your take on that from a sales perspective? How important are these formal education opportunities?
I think it depends on the industry. I'll go back. I think most often, yes, formal, at least a 4-year degree would be needed, I would think, at a minimal. But I do a lot of work in what's called, the industry is called AEC, architecture, engineering, construction. So I work with some general contractors, manufacturers who supply those general contractors. So if I start off working, I don't have a degree, but I start off working at a job site and I get promoted up through the ranks and become a project manager. That real world experience I learned working, from the ground up to become ultimately a project manager, then maybe a project supervisor, then maybe someday one of the partners in the business. That's another way too. I think you really need to look at the industry and what the industry would require. I think back in the day, project management wasn't a degree or something necessarily in college. I think it is now, though. I think that they're finding a need for some of these blue collar managerial positions are needed or part of the college curriculum as well too. But in the past, it
Yeah,
wasn't.
that makes complete sense. And I agree with that too. I mean, real world experience is different when it's in a textbook, it's theoretical, but actually going through it and experiencing that firsthand, solving those problems
That's right.
firsthand is a huge difference.
That's
Now,
right.
Steve, you talked about doing trainings in person. I think you also said webinars. How has that shift changed since 2020? Are people,
Yeah.
obviously things were all, virtual at that point. Are
Yeah.
things kind of going back the other way? Are you seeing an uptick in being the trainings in person? Is it a healthy blend? What's that like for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's been a healthy change. And to your point, yeah, 2020 was a shocker for me. Probably the first time I had a panic attack, when I saw my whole calendar get wiped clean. But I did transition a lot to, to your point, virtual webinars, which really carried the day as time went through. And even before that all happened, companies were talking about doing more virtual training, so on and so forth. Um, COVID just happened to expedite that. And I wasn't necessarily in agreement with that. I think virtual is a good supplement to regular training, but I still think you get more bang for the buck in live interactions. You can do role plays better. You can make eye contact, see who's engaged, who's not, and work that dynamic. So I was never a massive proponent of webinars and virtual training. But to your point, it did become big during 2020. Now, the reason I gave all that background is I think things are shifting back to people desiring live sessions, live interactions. And I think in many ways, companies who were hot on this virtual training platform before COVID, I think are realizing maybe that wasn't as big as, down the road as we thought. So I think ultimately some good came from that, where companies are starting to say, you know what, let's have a healthy balance on this. We still need those live engagements and then some virtuals where we need. So I think it created to some extent a healthy education on what works and what doesn't work, and what would be best moving forward.
So when you're doing these in-person sessions, is there a lot of travel involved for your particular company? Are you traveling, 3 weeks out of the month, or is it, one day a week typically? What does that typically look like?
It really depends on the client. Typically I am out on the road. So I travel to client sites or a neutral location where the company may be meeting for a national meeting and do a day or two workshop there. So there's been instances where I've left Sunday night. I didn't return till Saturday morning. In other times, it's typically 2 day. one-day workshops. If another client has something going on, I'll connect a trip there as well too. So is one of the learnings as an entrepreneur, especially as a consultant, I think the people may need to be prepared for that. It is not, it's a 9 to 10, kind of a 9 to 5 job, but not really. You make that life as you desire. But some days you're going to have to create and find that work. Maybe it's knocking on doors, making calls, creating content, writing a book. Other days you're going to be buried. I've owned my business for 20 years, and I like my freedom. I like the life I've created. I love what I do. I tell people I don't ever work a day in my life because I truly love what I do now. So
That's really awesome, because so few
yeah,
people are in jobs that they really enjoy. So it's important that people discover and they find those jobs that they think would be really tailored to what their interests are. And it sounds like
no
you found
doubt.
yours.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
did.
Let's talk briefly about your transition from corporate America to being an entrepreneur. So, sometimes people, they have a little side business going and then it gets big and then they have to make that decision. What do I do? Other people, they get laid off and then they say, well, what do
Yeah.
I do? I'm going to try to start my own business. What was that like for you, transitioning from corporate America to being an entrepreneur?
Well, for a while it was difficult. I mean, simply put, I didn't have the guts. I mean, I had security, I had a company car, I had a nice salary. You had that security, and fear of losing that was very, very frightening. However, as I said, it started getting to the point where I was thinking about the work on at weekends, at night. I couldn't sleep. That was a problem. And I knew I had to do something to act rather quickly. So I had left corporate America. I only lasted one time about 3 months because I chickened out and went back in. And I'm like, I can't do this again because I went from the fire to the frying pan. So at that time, life coaching started becoming big. I was living in New York City and I attended a woman's class. It was a night class. It was called Learning Annex, where you pay $49. You attend a 3-hour class to learn about something. So I attended her class about becoming a life coach. And it really became interesting to me. And I hired her as my coach out of pocket. And I started helping her in her seminars. So I was kind of taking a step in dipping a toe in the water, and I put skin in the game. I hired her as a coach to help me transition out of corporate America. I started helping her. At the same time, I started attending virtual classes with an organization called Coach University, where you learn different classes on how to be a coach. So I was doing that. I had my own coach. I was doing my day job, at the same time with Kodak at the time. I also took a behavioral assessment on my own called DISC. Are you familiar with DISC?
I am not.
It's like Myers-Briggs. I'm not sure if you've heard of Myers-Briggs, but it's a behavioral based assessment. When you take this assessment, it gives you like 24 pages of information about your behavior style, your communication style. And I received that report. Again, I did that on my own, actually, before I hired the coach. And it blew me away, this information. It pulled from me and gave me a lot of confidence in many ways, and gave me a push to hire her. So I wanted her to know all that she could about me. So I gave her my assessment report and said, hey, read this. This is all about me. I love this thing. She said, I don't know if you know, but you can become a certified instructor to coach and train against this assessment, DISC. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. And she said, no. So she hooked me up with someone who could help me. I got certified. I probably hired her in the June, May timeframe. I finally got certified in DISC by the October timeframe. I was still taking night classes. I resigned January that next year. So it was only like a 8-month span. But working with her, taking the step in and doing those coaching classes and literally getting certified in assessment that I knew gave me the foundation to do workshops on and have a coaching program to coach against, gave me that confidence to walk cold turkey. So I think the thing is you've got to step out and get your toe in the water, engaged somehow. I was fortunate enough to be able to do both because, I was able to do things at night and still do my day job. It took a lot of time, but it gave me a new life. It helped me see the light at the end of the tunnel. It gave me hope. that, that I was actually taking steps to get there. So that's my story. I know people go through different stories. Should they leave cold turkey? Or I was fortunate enough not to have to do that. And I had security. I had a nice salary that I could fall back on to as I was doing these things. Now, when I left cold turkey, I lost all that security, but fortunately for me too, I've been in the industry 20 years, so I did have some savings. I had 401k to fall back on. I had Cobra insurance for a year. So I did have some semblance of a security net, but it still was a step into the unknown. So
I love that story. I was speaking with Titus Walker maybe a week or two ago. He's the founder of UEL. It's an esports platform. He's a founder. And I asked him the same question. What was that process of like leaving your job in real estate and then going with your company? And essentially what happened with him was that his company gave him the ultimatum. They said, you either need to sell the company you're working on or leave it, or we're getting rid of you. And I'm paraphrasing here. So it's interesting to hear like the different stories, the different struggles people go through mentally, because that is a tough choice. Do I grow my own business? Do I take a chance on myself, or do I just leave it as a dream that, could have been, or something like that? So I like hearing those stories. Steve, I just have two more pieces for you. The first one, I have a surprise question. So this has nothing to do with your job, nothing to do with what you do for a living. So your question for today, we all get involved in simple projects. It could be changing the plate on a light switch, changing a filter, adding a stick of RAM in a computer. What is a simple project that should have only taken you maybe 5 minutes to do, but for whatever reason, it took much, much longer?
Anything dealing with a car. No, it's, there's a lot of those, I guess I would call them picayune, small projects. They would run the gamut. I'm not sure if I can give you anything specific, but it's areas that I shouldn't say force me, that the easy way out is procrastination. Whether it's things I'm not interested in home fixer-up stuff, dealing with car issues, things I'm just not interested in. I could have a tendency to put off, but I've come to the realization those are the areas that I need to work on for myself, because if I'm procrastination is not a good quality. So I've learned to identify those things in my life where procrastination can be a problem, and I've got to address that with full force and do something about it. And I actually had one last week where I had an unforeseen transmission issue in my car. And I had my monthly's $221 alone. I'm thinking, I don't want to give that up, but I did something last week I didn't want to do, and I ended up getting a new car, and I love it actually. And I hate the process of car shopping and all it entails. And I have to admit, I actually had fun this time and enjoyed it. It's because I think I got through the procrastination piece, and I did my homework. I did what I had to do, and actually grew from that experience. So old guys like me can grow too. So.
It's good stuff. When one of the earlier segments I did, I actually spoke with a hypnotist, Chris from White Rabbit Hypnosis, and he talked about, he specializes in helping people with procrastination. And he talks about, trying to overcome that, and, how it holds you back and all that stuff. So it's a real thing. That's a good answer. Thank you for that. Steve, the other thing I like to do is when I'm talking to someone, I do like to give them the opportunity to plug a cause they believe in, a project they're working on, then talk about their business. So Steve, I will give the floor to you for the next minute or two. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I have. I'm a two-time published author. My first book is called Reach Out Approach. My second book is called In Defense of Adversity: Turn Your Toughest Challenges into Your Greatest Success. Part of the research for this book, I interviewed over 60 highly successful people on 6 questions about how they face adversity. What do they learn from adversity? How do they prepare for it? So 60 people gave me, answered 6 questions. I either interviewed them or surveyed them. The information they supplied me was unbelievable. I mean, I have a PDF file about that thick. So unfortunately, I couldn't put all their stuff in this book. I just didn't have enough time. It was just a supplement to my book. Here's what successful people have to say about adversity. But what I wanted to do to honor their work, I put one of their inputs that they gave me in the survey into my book. So each person has one quote in that book. But the remaining 200, 300 responses remained unpublished. So a few about mid last year, I'm like, it was sticking in my craw. I'm like, this is great stuff. People need to read this or need to have this. So what I decided to do was to essentially publish their insights in full. So that book is called Thrive in the Face of Adversity. There's the cover, front back work that will be out. This book will be out in June, July timeframe. It's called Thrive in the Face of Adversity. 300 plus sage insights for learning, growing, facing learning, growing from life's obstacles. And it's basically, I put some meat in the introduction and at the beginning of each chapter, then it's basically the question and these people's responses, and then some exercises in it. But it's really a gold mine of information from these people. In the people who participate are businessmen and women, entrepreneurs, yoga instructors, physicians, professional amateur athletes, and coaches. I've like 3 UFC fighters fighting in the UFC who participated in it now. So it's really some robust information from great people, and that will be launching very soon. So I'd like your listeners to, consider getting in defensive adversity first. Then the complement to that would be the new one, Thrive in the Face of Adversity. That will be out in June, July timeframe. And if people want anything, helpful information, you feel free to Google me. My website's gavatorta.com. All my contact information is on that. Google me. I have a great YouTube site. There's a lot of information where people can learn about me, but also learn some things, helpful things that I've shared through different webinars or podcasts, or that I've put up as learning modules on my YouTube site. So, just go up there. It's a good resource to help you and help some of your viewers, and they may find helpful. But I'm rambling on, but I'm proud of my books. I'd like people to read them.
I'll make sure I get all those links from you. I'll put them in the description of the show. I'll put them with the show notes so everyone can view those and easily get to you. Steve, thank you so much for joining me on Time We Discuss, as we got to talk about you and your coaching endeavors.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks for popping in the studio. My name is Dan, and this is Time We Discuss. I really enjoyed speaking with Steve today, and I hope you enjoyed the time too. Make sure you check the links in the description to learn more. If there's a profession that you want me to cover, add a comment and I'll find that person for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That'll do it. See you next time on Time We Discuss.